Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. On July 28th, episode number 119, I did a video called Sometimes I'm Stuck. And it talked about the dilemma that we humans have in getting stuck in certain behaviors, certain bad situations, and sometimes getting emotionally stuck at an age where a significant drama occurred. I have had so many questions and so many people bring up this topic to me over the last month or so that I would like to address it further. And thus, this episode is called I'm Still Stuck. It's really very challenging when your child goes through something tough. I think one of the more difficult things is when your child goes through something that you have a part in. Let me describe that to you. When a mom and a dad get divorced, regardless of a child's age, if they're 3, 7, 14, and frankly, even if they're a young adult, it has a massive emotional and psychological impact on a child. That would be logical because the home is the most stable unit in all of culture. And when the home is broken or divided, it really adversely impacts a kid. There is irrefutable proof, so much research that backs this up, that even when a child lives in an abusive or an unhealthy, dysfunctional home, it is a better option for the folks to stay together than for them to divorce. It really destabilizes a child's life when his or her parents divorce. Why would that be? Well, because a child's sense of security and stability and groundedness in the entire world and their world comes from their home. When their home is broken apart, of course, everything for them in their entire world breaks. And most parents don't want to admit, I had a part in something very significant that was traumatic for my child. But you need to own up and admit that, okay, I did this for my own well being, or I did this because I thought it was the best option. It still had a lot of adverse effects on my child, and I need to help my child cope with that. Okay, so there's a really tough one that is difficult to admit. Sometimes it is a matter, and I'm going to use this word kindly and gently, of neglect. In other words, we're so busy developing our career. We're so busy with our friends. We're so preoccupied with our own issues, which sometimes happens when a person is severely depressed or facing a really significant illness, that we neglect our children. I know someone who had cancer, and on top of everything else in the middle of it all, they got pretty severely depressed. They probably neglected their child for 2 to 3 years in all of that process. There isn't any blame or guilt. It's just what happened. And that child was really neglected. And even now, as an adult, that child has ramifications of that neglect. We have to admit to ourselves the part that we play in some of what goes on with our children. I'm going to give you a really graphic example. If you're in a room with your children, I'd like you to either wait to watch this or put in headphones. I don't really want your children to hear this part. I had a friend who was with a guy in a car, and the guy was a drug dealer, and he got shot right in the head. And blood and other things were spattered all over this young man who was my friend's son. He was 16 years old, and I will not tell you his name. He was very traumatized by that. No joke, right? But what was worse, I think, was his mom and dad's response. Because instead of saying, oh, thank God you're alive, or, I'm so glad nothing happened to you, they said to him, well, we told you not to be hanging out with this guy. We told you, basically all they did was blame him and get on his back. And he had to go to court about all of this, and it was horrible. And I have to tell you, into his young adulthood, no one ever dealt with this. No one dealt with this within the family. He didn't deal with it. He didn't go to counseling. He just significantly got worse and worse and worse and worse. It was not a good thing. I just want you to understand some really tough things go on, And sometimes, honestly, even as adults, as parents, as people with a certain amount of life experience and sense, we still don't handle things well every time. And our kids are the ones who suffer. So, this I'm still stuck thing, let me say to you, if you were raped, if you were sexually abused or molested as a young boy, if someone beat you up really badly and it was horribly traumatic for you, if your mom and dad went through a really awful divorce and you still have a hard time in the depths of your soul about that sense of abandonment and not really being sure, even when people say they love you, that they do or that they won't be leaving you sometime. I am so sorry about that. I mean it. I want you to hear me loudly and clearly. You didn't deserve it. It wasn't right. And you were a kid. Someone should have been taking care of you, not hurting you or allowing you to be hurt. If you were neglected and you still feel that neglect, if your mom went through breast cancer and it was so scary and you're still scared, every time you hear the C word, you freak out. If your dad got a really bad, severe, permanent illness like multiple sclerosis or something like that, and now he's in a wheelchair, and that happened to you when you were 14 or 15 years old, and you were still traumatized by that, I want you to know you do not have to stay stuck. You really can get unstuck. I'm going to tell you a few things. I'm going to review for you, and then I'm going to even tell you more. A, you need to admit that you're stuck. It's a big deal. Admit it. B, you need to get some help. You are not going to do this all by yourself. If you haven't proven that to yourself by now, 5, 10, or 20 years later, then you need to own up to that today. I'm not going to get better by myself. I'm going to need some help. I'm going to develop an action plan, and I'm going to have someone, probably that person helping me, a pastor, a counselor, help me look at options that are available to me. Okay, so admit it. I'm really stuck. I know when this happened, it changed me. I might not even understand all the ways that it changed me. This is where talking to a counselor, talking to someone knowledgeable, might help me see things that I've been afraid to look at or I've been unable to see clearly for myself. Then I'm going to acknowledge that I need help. Like, I seriously have got to have help. I haven't gotten over this myself, and it's affecting all the relationships around me. I'm still acting like a 12-year-old when things are challenging or difficult. I'm still emoting like a 7-year-old. I don't get it, and I don't even have control over it sometimes. Of course, that happened to you, but that was a long time ago, and you can do something differently now. You aren't a child any longer. You really are an adult. You have a different set of understandings of the world and a whole nother set of equipment. And if you don't have it yet, you can certainly get it. And I'm going to try to do my best to help you with that today. You need to develop an action plan. I'm going to get help. I'm going to go to counseling for at least 6 months. This is sometimes harder for a guy to say, but I'm going to go until I see a breakthrough. I'm going to do it. It doesn't mean I'm going to love it every day. I've told you this before. If you go to a counselor and it is not a good fit, don't keep going. Go to another one. You don't always hit it off right away with someone, but you need to keep going. You need to be that committed to your own self care and to your own emotional healing and well being. I'm going to go to counseling. I'm going to do it for 6 months, or I'm going to do it as long as it takes. I'm going to be honest with myself and someone else. I don't know. Sometimes your spouse may not be the best choice. If they're already trying to handle a lot about how you've been and what you've done, they might not be the right person for you to share this with. Might be better to share it with a brother that you went through it with, or a sister that you went through it with, or even a good friend that didn't go through any of it with you, but loves you and cares about you and is going to be faithful to you and stand by you. You need to, in that action plan, develop things that you will do. Sometimes that is when I come up against a stressful situation, I usually blank, fall apart, cry, squall hysterically, withdraw, act ugly, get angry, get super defensive. And I'm not going to be doing that anymore. I'm going to learn day by day when difficult things up to stand there and face it, to toughen up a little bit, not squall like a child, but say, I didn't like that. That was hurtful. That was painful. Really acknowledge and handle my emotions. But I'm not going to continue to do what I've done all along, which is behave in an immature manner that does not really work for me now as a grown up. I'm going to take responsibility for my own actions. If I've always blown up and torn stuff up and come unglued and cussed and yelled and acted stupidly when I was upset, like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old would do, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's self destructive. It's destructive to my relationships. It isn't a great example to my kids. Part of my action plan is I'm going to learn how to get a hold of my emotional state. I'm going to control my anger and my frustrations, and I'm certainly going to control my actions and my mouth. That's an action plan. And as I heal, I'm going to be gracious to myself. So again, as I've shared, you stand in front of a mirror and say, I forgive you. I forgive you for handling it badly in the past. And I know you're going to do better in the future. Part of that action plan, in my opinion, is pray. Acknowledge to God, I need your help because I'm still really angry. I'm still really hurt. I still feel really betrayed and have a hard time making good emotional connections with people because I'm constantly thinking they're going to leave me or abandon me. I need your help, God. That's a very viable option. And I want you to know that there really are people around who can help you, who are concerned about you, who are interested in you. And I want you to find some of those people. If you can't find anyone else, then please contact me. Send me an email at paintabeautifulpicture at gmail.com so it's not a comment that's available to the public, and ask me questions. Talk to me about referrals. Discuss with me. Tell me your story. Tell me you can't quite see your way clear of it. What should you do? I'm more than willing to listen, and I'm certainly willing to help you in any way I can. All of this, of course, applies to your child. If it applies to you, it applies to them. If you can help them process it while it's initially happening, you will save them years, sometimes decades, of grief and sorrow. So do your best to help your child process things. It isn't a sin to get stuck, but I think it's really a tragedy to stay stuck. And so I hope this has been a lot of help for you today. My challenge question for you today is this: am I stuck? Do I see a place in my child's life where they may be stuck? Am I willing to work at getting unstuck? Am I willing to help my child to get through this, process this, handle this in a different way than they would without assistance so that they don't get stuck? Thank you so much for being with me here on Paint a Beautiful Picture. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.